Hello and welcome to the Story of Triumvirat. I'm Doug Ray and I will be your guide in the next while through a detailed history of the famous German progressive rock band. Interspersed throughout will be photos from my collection of Triumvirat press photos, ads, and posters. A lot of members came and went in the history of Triumvirat, and I will be dealing with their involvement specifically with the band only. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 53 years old and Canadian, and I discovered the music of Triumvirat in the spring of 1985 when a friend of mine lent me some LP copies of Illusions on a Double Dimple and Old Loves Die Hard. Since that time, I have been a staunch fan and champion of what will always remain my favorite band. In 2010, I joined the famous progressive rock internet site Prog Archives, and under the username PresDoug, I have been posting and doing album reviews, polls, and articles on Triumvirat with Prog Archive, including a thread that I started called Have You Seen Triumvirat Live?, which has now encompassed many pages and many responses, I'm glad to say. Now on to Triumvirat. Triumvirat were basically initially a progressive rock trio formed in Cologne, Germany in 1969. Their founding members were Hans-Jürgen Fritz on keyboards, who was a classically trained pianist and also an honors student at the Cologne Conservatory. Also there was Hans Bathelt on drums and also doing lyrics for the band. And there was Dick Frankenberg, who played bass. In time, it was found that Frankenberg could not rehearse properly with Triumvirat, so in 1970, he was replaced by bassist and vocalist Hans Papa. Triumvirat initially were inspired by the British group The Nice, and even featured some of their songs in their concerts. The band started experimenting with their own music, and they sent a tape of it to EMI Records in Germany, and they soon had their own record contract. In 1972, there was the release of their debut album, Mediterranean Tales Across the Waters. This record has remained a brilliant, classically inspired work. Even on side one's suite, the beginning and end are the adaptation of the famous Mozart opera overture. There were a couple of singles created at this time, one taken from the album itself, and another couple of separate songs, Ride in the Night and Sing Me a Song, which were released as a single in 1973. The follow-up album, Illusions on a Double Dimple, Hans Papa left in the midst of recording side one. He had just got married and his wife did not want him to go on tour. He was replaced by Jürgen Fritz's cousin, Helmut Kohlen, who had been a sound man for Triumvirat previously. Mr. Kohlen was also an accomplished bassist and six-string guitarist and vocalist. And he contributed to the rest of the recording of Illusions on a Double Dimple in earnest. This album was a concept album about someone who was down and out and had lost their job and wanted to drink it all away. The trio of Colin, Fritz, and Bathelt around this time also recorded a single, Timothy and Dancer's Delight, which was released in 1973. The band took a long time in laboring over the Illusions on a Double Dimple recording, but finally in April 1974, the album was released in Europe. A copy was sent to Capitol Records in the USA, and it was later issued in North America in July of '74. Triumvirat went to the USA in the fall of 1974 and did a live in-studio performance of Illusions at the Ultrasonic Studios in Hempstead, New York. And this was broadcast over the FM radio. After this, they started a successful tour opening for the group Fleetwood Mac in the US. Illusions on a Double Dimple did well in the US, reaching number 55 on the album charts. The series of concerts with Fleetwood Mac culminated in a program for television with ABC's In Concert, where Triumvirat were filmed playing the first part of the first suite from Illusions on a Dimple. And that was broadcast coast to coast in the middle of January 1975. Next came the concept album Spartacus, based on the gladiator who led a revolt against the Roman Empire in 73 AD. This was quite an undertaking, and the tapes were mixed by former Beatles engineer Geoff Emerick. The album was released in the spring of 1975, and Triumvirat initially went on a European tour for the album with Grand Funk Railroad. The record became popular in the USA, Canada, Europe, and markets like Brazil and Argentina. Triumvirat toured the States with groups like ELO, Supertramp, Nectar, Pavlov's Dog, and others. At this time, in America, a local Orlando, Florida TV station paired up with a FM radio station for a simulcast of Triumvirat playing music from the Spartacus album. There were also a few forays into Canada. In July of '75, Triumvirat played Calgary, Alberta with Supertramp, and later on that year with BTO in Montreal. Later in 1975, Helmut Kohlin announced his plan to leave the group and start on a solo career. At the end of '75, this occurred, and they got Doug Fieger, later of the Knack, as a replacement. Things were a little hectic and chaotic around this time. Fieger didn't stay, but was then later replaced with a returning Dick Frankenberg. Through an ad in the music magazine Melody Maker, Triumvirat got connected with British singer Barry Palmer. And the new Triumvirat at this time recorded a stab at a radio-friendly single called Take a Break Today, which was recorded in December of '75. In the new year, from January until April, Triumvirat recorded their fourth studio album, which was titled Old Loves Die Hard, and was released soon after. Old Loves Die Hard did not sustain the popularity of Spartacus, and it did chart in the US, but only reached position 85. Ever busy and creative, Jürgen Fritz started to labor on a new concept album based on the disaster in Pompeii, Italy. This would involve Barry Palmer rejoining the band and some other changes. Around this time, Helmut Koehlen was asked to return to Triumvirat. He did so, but for various reasons, things didn't really work out. One main reason being that he was finding the new music a bit outside of his vocal range. Alas, and sadly, tragedy struck the band. In May of 1977, May 3rd to be exact, Helmut Koehlen was found dead inside his enclosed garage, having succumbed to carbon monoxide fumes from his car while listening to music on his car's cassette deck. Helmut was at the tender age of 27. This was a great blow to Triumvirat, but Jürgen Fritz and the rest of the band forged on. Kurt Kress from Passport was added on drums, and the same Dieter Pederet was added on bass guitar. And with a returning Barry Palmer on vocals, this band, entitled The New Triumvirat, recorded New Triumvirat Presents Pompeii. The band played a lot in Germany at this time, and a song from the album called The Hymn became their best-selling single. In 1978, there was the recording and release of the album A la Carte, which featured both Barry Palmer and David Hanselman on vocals. Werner Koppel joined in on bass, and Matthias Holtmann on drums. This was a more pop-oriented effort than previous albums, and unfortunately, the singles taken from the album did not do that well. There was no US tour, and Triumvirat were dropped from their US record deal. In 1979 and 80 was the creation of the last project for Triumvirat at this time, an album which was called Russian Roulette. This involved many session musicians, including Steve Lukather and Jeff Porcaro from Toto, and also Arno Steffen on vocals. From side one, the song Party Life was released as a single. There were a couple of tours that were featuring Hanselman, Steffen, and Palmer that unfortunately were not fully realized, and Jürgen Fritz dissolved the Triumvirat format. Now, fast forward to 2002, and a new album called The Website Story was recorded, but not released as the record company backing it went bankrupt. I would now like to acknowledge a debt I owe to the Triumvirat expert Russ Chenoweth, whose groundbreaking and important biography on the net, the Triumvirat biography, made this whole thing possible. I would also like to thank my friend Lionel Wagner, who was involved in filming me and presenting this project of mine. To sum up, I would like to say that Triumvirat's music holds a special place in my heart, and always will. Their brilliant technique, sublime and inspired musical creations do things for me that no other musical artist does. They were kind of unique and different from other groups, and I think that's what I love about them the most. I would like to take this time to dedicate my project to all the group members of Triumvirat and all their fans, past and present, around the world. For me, this greatest of groups will always remain Triumvirat triumphant. Thanks for the wonderful music.